Sorry I'm so gloomy, but the gloom is half the mood. Welcome to the country where they throw out half the food. Like fuck you if you're hungry, we got better things to do. Got a million more priorities than human rights for you. Just empty stomachs wandering an empty store, with shelves as empty as our craters left on distant shores. They mark the spot where once a country thrived that even tried to help its poor. Now in its place a fascist state where rape is just a tool of war. I guess they took a page from out the book we used in '64. The villagers we stacked in graves caked in fucking Agent Orange. Now cut to yesterday, Afghanistan endures the very storm that swept its way through Vietnam, where even now the blood is warm. And even now Fallujah celebrates to see a baby born who's not deformed, not warped by little presents we left hidden in the dirt, courtesy of all your friends at the World Economic Forum. Courtesy of civilized political decorum. Unity across the aisle, both sides agreeing via war crime quorum. I'd like to say that when they start the midterm texts, I'll be able to ignore them. But I know myself well enough to know I'm gonna draw them all rhetorically, then verbally I'll quarter them. Lyrically I'll carpet bomb and mortar them. Purely via metaphor I'll bury them alive, but upside down, with the utmost blasphemy intended out of spite. Now lyrically I'll lead them by the eyes, cause lyrically I'm still beneath the ice, scratching at the surface for a purpose they deny. And every time they smile and they look me in the eyes, suddenly I'm 6 feet under subprime. 6 feet standing firmly in between you and the sunrise. And now your movement's as restricted as the sunrise. Now it's crippled into parody like Occupy. Young hearts be free, young Turks here to slowly poison hearts and minds. Here to get them speaking press release in record time. Here to get them standing up for AOC and every other Langley plant who sprays a coat of tax the rich across their Semper Fi. Now the skies are nice and clear, the drones are set to fly. They're following the pipeline of how the West was won to how the West declined, to how the West made debt into a genocide, to how the West demolishes a picket line, to how the West contaminates a riverside, to how the West's war crimes are glamorized, to how the West protects the kind of medical neglect that is infanticide at best and is at worst an ethnic cleansing rite. Now it's safe to say it's all fun and games until the feds arrive. Oh shit.
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Ian?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. You know, the issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
You heard that right, fam. Labels are bad. We gotta teach people out here. It's INN News, everyone. Welcome. It's me, Reef Breland, with my co-host, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. We're here on some different channels this week. So
we're on Indy's personal channel. Shout out to Indy for allowing us to stream while we're in YouTube jail again.
Yeah.
So our jail sentence should be released Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
So we're able to go live, but unfortunately we've been, well, as YouTube says, temporarily demonetized for the next 3 months. So
3 months.
Well, as I say, you know, well, I'm saying allegedly because that's nothing to say that they can't demonetize us permanently. So I wouldn't put it past YouTube.
We're also on
to do
alternative
that.
platforms like Rockfin and Rumble, and we appreciate if you're there right now. If you're there, leave us a comment. You know, we want to know you're a real person and not just a fake view. So, you know, we appreciate that. Throw us some support on there. Leave a like, all that fun stuff. Make sure you're subbed on Rockfin and Rumble. You know, just in case we go down here. So
Right. Well, I will say this, and this happens every single time we get a strike. People sub to us even during that. So actually, we've got a few subs over the past week. I mean, we're doing content, but not on INN, but people have been subbing to INN. So thank you so much for that. And welcome to any new folks who might be watching us now. You're a fam. You're welcome. But as Reef said, we're probably going to see more of this or stuff like this moving forward in terms of, you know, Israel-Palestine. I'm sure there's going to be other stuff that mainstream media will not want us to talk about, that they just might decide to shut down channels outright. So as I said earlier, I'm very hesitant to say that they will remonetize us. Hopefully they do, but again, it was not, I wouldn't put it past YouTube that they can just decide now we decide just to not have you be monetized ever again after this.
If you're a YouTube member, like these people down here, we suggest not being one and being one on Patreon or Substack or whatever. Keep all your benefits we give you now. We'll keep your name in the chat here. So, but you know, just in case YouTube decides to demonetize us further. But yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. But it's not going to stop us to talk about what we're going to talk about. But we got to be extremely careful to not say anything that will kind of alert YouTube of anything that they might deem not nice. That being said, not nice.
We're gonna have to say allegedly a lot, and things like safe and effective a few times. So if you want us to be here, we'll try to play that game. But you know, otherwise we are other places where we don't have to play that game. So pick your poison there, kids. But anyway, you want to get to stories?
Sure. And even just titling these was not difficult, but we had to do a swerve to not fully say what we want to say here. So, so we are going to continue with Israel-Palestine since that's been the hottest of topics right now. But there's a certain phrase regarding Palestine that I'm sure a lot of you might have heard frequently that is somewhat problematic for some. So we're going to look at how is it really problematic, and what does that phrase actually mean. So that'll be our first segment, and then later on tonight, so we got BB and Biden doing a bro hug there. But obviously, given that we're sending way more money to Israel than in addition to what we already give them, and now we have a new Speaker of the House who is basically like, "Yay, Israel! Give them more money." So as of earlier this afternoon, so we're going to talk about how Biden's actions, unsurprisingly, is going to alienate the black vote. News, I think for many of you, because you guys are very smart, will not be surprised by. And not just black people, but I think especially to black people, given we don't get shit in this country at all unless we have to make a huge stink about it. But we are going to talk about how Biden is overly protective of Israel, almost to the detriment of marginalized communities in this country that may just choose not to vote for him, and I am all for that. So we'll talk about that later. And what you got, Reef?
Well, I got something near and dear to our hearts here at INN. Some label talk. We're going to talk about some labels. So be prepared for finding out labels are bad again. But if you're going to use labels, might as well get them right. And we're going to talk about the specifics on that in regards to Israel-Palestine and how particular groups are being labeled there. So allegedly. Next up is how the U.S. blocked peace in Ukraine. We got a little hippie Putin there, very nice. So we'll talk about how new evidence has shown that we're to blame there as well. So yeah, lovely stories about how this country's terrible. So is the rest of the world.
Just one thing before we start. I'm not sure if our audiences can tell, but for me at least, you're kind of fading in and out in terms of
sound.
You speak.
Cool.
Yeah,
You can
you
work on
sound
that.
so.
Let's just try this.
Yeah, I could still hear you, but
Yep.
they kind of fade in and out from time to time.
Cool. I can fix a bit of that. But anyway, you ready? Hopefully.
I am ready. All right, so let's get started. So yeah, as I said earlier, this segment is not what I wanted to name it, but again, YouTube. So this is actually in reference to this phrase that you might have heard. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. But some people comment that from the river to the sea is a call to genocide. So this is an article bought from Decolonized Palestine. And actually, after looking at it over the weekend and prepping yesterday, they actually have some great articles. So do check them out. The link, at least to this article and other articles you can reference to them, are in the description below. But they're going to debunk the myth that from the river to the sea phrase is a call to genocide.
Okay.
So we're going to get into that. These anxieties are hardly unique to Jewish Israelis. Settlers in many different colonies throughout history have echoed these same sentiments. If we were to take a look at the narrative surrounding anti-apartheid South Africa activism and boycotts, we would find eerily similar projections and arguments. For example, in an article for the Globe and Mail under the title The Good Side of White South Africa, Kenneth Walker argued that ending the apartheid system and giving everyone an equal vote would be a recipe for the slaughter in South Africa. Others, such as Slingler, echoed similar claims, saying that anti-racist activists were actually not interested in ending apartheid as a policy, but in South Africa as a society. Others came out to claim these activists were actually motivated by anti-white racism, fueled by Black imperialism. Political
So,
comics displayed a giant
similar to
bear
anti-Semitism
bearing-
and,
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Political comics displayed a giant Soviet bear bearing down on South Africa, declaring, "We shall drive South Africa into the sea." Sound familiar?
It does.
As Fred Moten once said, settlers always think they're defending themselves. That's why they build forts on other people's land. And then they freak out over the fact that they are surrounded, and they're still surrounded. Similarly, in Israel, the rights of Palestinian refugees are positioned as a diametric opposite to the very life of the Israeli settler. The return of said refugees then becomes nothing short of annihilation. Therefore, not only does the settler seek to deny the return of the native refugees, but to attack the entire concept of these refugees having any rights to begin with.
As we've seen.
Yes, as we've seen. Prior to October 7th. However, in the rare cases where Israeli advocates even acknowledge that Palestinian refugees were wronged and that their dispersal around the world was due to Israeli actions, the argument becomes that while it is tragic, it is the only way to keep the Jewish people safe.
Right.
Once again, this pretense is hardly unique to Jewish Israelis. As a matter of fact, similar arguments were used against the abolition of slavery in the United States. For example, Thomas Jefferson likened slavery to a wolf. We have the wolf by the ear, and we can neither hold him nor safely let him go. Justice is in one scale and self-preservation in the other. How utterly ridiculous this all sounds now. While the first approach is crude and vile propaganda designed to instigate fear and panic, it is par for the course for settler societies. Perhaps the second approach stands out a little bit more for its brazen attempt at manipulation. In the final endeavor to center their experiences and erase their victims, settlers framed themselves as the stars of their own tragedy. In the end, they were the tragic victims of fate, forced to wield injustice for the sake of self-preservation. Underlying the logic of both of these approaches are racist assumptions that the colonized are barbaric, bloodthirsty, and ruthless. It is a deeply dehumanizing topic steeped in every colonial and Orientalist truth. The idea that a free Palestine would inevitably lead to genocide comes from that same logic. As a matter of fact, for all the claims of the Palestinians wanting to push Israelis into the sea, only the opposite has occurred in reality. And actually, if you want to read that, you can click on that link. And again, you can link this article in the description.
Okay.
I would have pulled from it, but it's kind of long. And I think that might be worthwhile in a separate segment. Itself.
Well, links for articles are in the description below as always. You can go there, check that out.
Yep. Projecting genocidal intent onto even the mildest calls for justice for Palestinians has long been a staple for Israeli Hasbara. These intellectually dishonest interpretations are par for the course. But what is it exactly that Palestinians are calling for when they chant this phrase? There is no point in denying the reality on there exists one nuclear-armed power between the river and the sea, and it's not the Palestinians. While the Palestinian Authority has some limited administrative powers in certain areas, it has absolutely no sovereign powers. And actually, I know you're going to talk about this kind of, I think, in the next segment. And actually, I probably have a rant to go along with that.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk about that later. As a matter of fact, Israel even determines who is a Palestinian citizen and who is not, and is in the de facto control of the Palestinian Citizens Registry. Right. Israel exercises its control and hegemony through a matrix of control consisting of a mishmash of different legal systems and practices for different ethnicities in different areas. You can also read more about that
in the description below.
If you like. Oh, you go to the article and find it from there.
Yep.
When Palestinians call for freedom from the river to the sea, they are calling for decolonization and the dismantling of this racist colonial entity which dominates their lives, and seek to replace it with a state that would not exist at the expense of the subjugation of others. This is hardly a new or radical position. Such an entity was suggested by the Arab states as a counter-proposal to the 1947 partition plan. Naturally, this was rejected by the Zionists. That we barely ever hear about the offers that the Vishvu Israel rejected should be an indicator of the nature of mainstream discussions of Palestine and the silencing of Palestinian voices. The Palestinian Liberation Organization also called for establishing a secular, democratic, unitary state for all of its citizens. Naturally, none of these proposals included genocide, ethnic cleansing, or mass murder.
There we go.
Regardless of your ideological leanings, the reality is that we are already living under a de facto one-state reality. Israel politicians proudly boast about never allowing a Palestinian state to materialize. Israeli school books already erased the Green Line. Israel already rules the lives of everyone there. Palestinians calling for the dissolution of this naked colonialism is legitimate and just. The fact that Palestinians are even asked to guarantee the well-being and welfare of their oppressors as they are killed, imprisoned, and brutally repressed daily is a testament to their utter dehumanization.
Yep. Well, I mean, this speaks a lot to what I'm going to cover.
So you might as well.
We'll get
jump
there.
Into it, 'cause I know it's a little
while. Well, it's you know the we've talked about this before in regards to condemnation, right? You're asking Palestinians to condemn themselves, and not even themselves, parts of themselves, which is that they have no control over, that Israel made to fight the Palestinians, who were more secular, less fundamental, because they didn't like what they were saying either. So, because they wanted a free Palestine, you know? So you went to your colonial powers to get this land away from the indigenous people there, and now you're reaping those rewards. So, you know, fun stuff, right?
Sounds stuff.
Any closing thoughts?
Before we continue, I think, well, kind of quick, but someone said you're quiet still.
Yeah,
so
I turned it up a little bit. I will shout out the Rockfin momentarily. Let me pull that up. We've got the Talking Wombat, Rockfin in the Rockfin room, saying we should use the word reportedly. It's been suggested that the U.S. blocked peace. Some people say the U.S. destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline. You know, and I, of course, am blaming the sentient boot that really did it. You know, those boots have a mind of their own. You don't know. So, put that back over here and close this and go back to our PowerPoint. So, our next story this evening. Blurred labels. You're wondering why I have this photo of Robin Thicke's famous song, Blurred Lines. And it's because I'm going to have to blur a lot of this article, but as well as It's the labels are being blurred here. So we're going to get into those labels, particularly these ones that I have blurred. This is one, you know, you might, it rhymes with hummus. You know, that one. Really bad. Close enough. The
Close enough.
Right, is a terror organization. So is the Israeli government. And we're going to get into that. So first I wanted to bring the definition. This is by Norman Solomon over at antiwar.com. Great stuff from those guys. You may not like all their positions, but they do well for the most part. So, but I pulled this directly from the Oxford, right off the Google. So, terrorist, right? A person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Okay? That's one definition here, right? Unlawfully using violence and intimidation, especially against civilians. Okay? Just keep that in your head of what that means. This is from Wikipedia. Terrorism, in its broadest sense, is the use of intentional violence and fear to achieve political or ideological aims. The term is used in this regard primarily to refer to intentional violence during peacetime or in the context of war against non-combatants. Okay? So, very important things to make distinctions of. So, Norman writes, labels are bad. I mean, central to the politics of media. And no label has been more powerful than terrorist. A simple standard of language should accompany a consistent standard of human rights which the world desperately needs. If thought corrupts language, Orwell wrote, language can also corrupt thought. Who's read their 1984? Raise your hands. So terrible ending on that book. He really should have rewrote it. Gave some hope. Would have been nice. So language can also corrupt. Yeah, you're like, it kind of needs the shitty ending.
Yes.
Yep. A bad usage can be spread
like
by
many anime.
Right. A bad usage can spread by tradition and imitation, even among people who should and do know better. Okay? No amount of rhetoric from its defenders and apologists can change the reality that Hamas engaged in mass murder. What Hamas horrifically did to more than 1,000 Israeli civilians of all ages 2 weeks ago meets the dictionary definition of terrorism. Now, I will admit that Hamas denies the targeting of civilians and that they were caught in crossfire. First off, I want to state that, because that is part of this story. Take that what you will. And no amount of rhetoric can change the reality, this is the big but here that Norman's getting to, that the Israeli government has engaged in mass murder during the last 2 weeks and a long time before that, Norman. Yeah. What Israel's military is horrifically doing in Gaza, already killing several thousand Palestinian civilians of all ages, also meets the definition of terrorism. No? Remember that definition we read a minute ago? The U.S. media outlets dodge being even-handed with the terrorist label, applying it to organized Palestinian killers of Israelis and not to organized Israeli killers of Palestinians. The routine media bias does not in any way mitigate the horrendous crimes committed by Hamas in Israel, and that media bias does not in any way mitigate the horrendous crimes that are being committed on an even larger scale, increasing daily, by the Israeli government in Gaza. So,
with our money.
Friend of the So Spookies is spooky. Israel is a terrorist state, she puts. I've seen this photo pushed around quite a few times, and we're going to go into why that might be the case. Let's look at this. Look at this flag I had to blur. Everyone knows this one. So this is the Nazis. Those guys. They were founded on what, Collin? Aryan supremacy, correct? Well, let's look at Israel. Look at their Jewish supremacy. Look at that. Look at that. Expelled millions from their homes. Put racial groups in ghettos and camps. Use dehumanizing language for undesirables. I think we start to get.
Yahoo did it again today. Like he called, like children of light.
Children of Light and Darkness, which is straight out of SS handbooks, straight from their handbooks. They use the exact same language. Exact same language. So, Norman continues, by any consistent standard, if referring to Hamas as a town organization, then the same description fits the Israeli government. But such balanced candor is absolutely intolerable in the mainstream media and the politics of the United States. It would be too honest, too real. Terrorists and their defenders always have excuses when tactics include ruthlessly killing civilians, but we're choking on a nonstop supply of smoke-blowing rhetoric, what Orwell called political language, designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. Sounds like some manufacturing consent there, does it not? Some have contended that the word terrorist should be excluded from news accounts because it can be subjective. Okay, we're going to go back, Collin. We're going to have to go back to the memory banks here. So, although ignored or derived soon after 9/11, you remember 9/11, right?
9/11 was bad.
It was bad. So, this is Reuters, okay? News service explained its policy this way. Throughout this difficult time, we've strictly adhered to our 150-year-old tradition of factual, unbiased reporting and upheld our long-standing policy against the use of emotive terms, including the words terrorist or freedom fighter. We do not characterize the subjects of news stories, but instead report their actions, identity, or background. Okay? Does that make sense to you, Care Bear? You get what Reuters was saying back then? In regards to the Iraq War, they're saying we're not going to use terrorist or whatever. They must have lost this rule, right? They must have forgot about this. So, you know who didn't forget about this? George Carlin. We're going to go to church. People need to, every once in a while, listen to the sermons of George. I think this is book 9, chapter 3, for those who have their book of Carlin in their pew.
As simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. As simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. Or they depopulate the area. The government doesn't lie and engages in disinformation. The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something they call sunshine units. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight?
What do freedom fighters fight, Care Bear?
I have no idea.
Right? So, little bit of Carlin this evening. So, I mean, he's not wrong. Israeli murderers are called commandos, and Arab murderers are called terrorists, as we are known to call them now. So let's not forget we've just been involved in another war in Europe, and we've been sending a lot of propaganda about that there, right? Look at that. That's a Ukrainian hero, Care Bear. Right? You know, they're teaching their children to just be violent, no? But that Palestinian with a rock is just real bad, right? Just super terrorist. So yeah. The media stance is an outlier. We seem to be struck with the terrorist word. Ending the routinely slanted selective use of the T word would be a real improvement. More realistically, we should resign and reject its flagrant skewed usage. It functions in sync with an array of tilted reporting patterns. Since the latest Israeli assault on Gaza began, U.S. news outlets have consistently used euphemistic words like strike, hammer, pressure, and retaliate to blur the real meaning of what it has meant to human beings when a very densely populated area is attacked with thousands of large bombs. Vivid reporting has occurred at times, but the overwhelming bulk of coverage of the Israeli government's wide-ranging terrorism has been abstracted in ways that coverage of the Hamas terrorism has not been. One factor that makes the blurring easier, the Hamas atrocities were mostly up close with the murderers and murderer often facing each other, whereas the Israeli atrocities have been committed from high in the air as if above it all. While in international media, outlets like Al Jazeera English and the US-based program Democracy Now!, Al Jazeera, by the way, now banned from Israel. So keep that in mind. Have consistently provided extraordinary, high-quality, heart-rendering reportage about the carnage and terror in Gaza, as well as in Israel. Such humanely equitable reporting has been extremely rare in mainland U.S. media outlets. Americans have been acculturated to assume, consciously or not, that killing people with high-tech weaponry from the air is a civilized way to go about the business of war. If the U.S. or its allies are doing it, in sharp contrast to low-tech efforts of adversaries, this is an outlook from a privileged vantage point far from those on the receiving end of sophisticated firepower coming from or backed by the U.S. government. Overall, given the extreme pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian spin of U.S. mass media, even-handed use of the terrorist label is highly unlikely, but we should strive to challenge the biases at work and the deadly consequences. Norman Solomon, National Director of RootsAction.org and Executive Director of the Institute for Public Accuracy. He's the author of many books, include War Made Easy. His latest book, War Made Invisible, How America Hides the Human Toll of Its Military Machine, was published in summer 2023. Links to all that stuff in the article in the description below. So, before we move on, Care Bear, any thoughts?
I mean, you kind of talked about this last week in regards to, I'm not going to say the word, but it starts with a C.
Oh, yes.
Ends in Asian.
Yes.
The idea of you can't the one group in this case.
You cannot put condoms on them. Do not put a condom on them. So yeah, also the ceasefire word being thrown around a lot.
Oh, you know what? Can I get you're gonna talk about that now, right?
I mean, I was just gonna touch on it, but it's the fact of me and you have talked about it multiple times that it states that there's both sides to that problem.
Well, you know what? I'm going to talk about it right now.
Please.
Because no one, but I think it just shows how no one is thinking and just kind of accepting the propaganda that there is regarding oh, we need a ceasefire, and just having this repetitive, to the point now, normies are saying, oh, we need a both, even those who are pro-Palestine are kind of calling for oh, we need a ceasefire because but let's break down what a ceasefire is, right? So if ceasefire, basically, it's when you're telling at minimum two political powers. Now, even with that, is an issue because what kind of political standing do Palestinians have in terms of sovereignty? Absolutely none. So, but let's for this example, we'll give them sovereign power. So Israel and Palestine are equal, in this case. And so the idea of a ceasefire is that you stop your conflict and then negotiate over whatever items or things that the opposing parties want to have, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically trying to compromise on, we'll stop if I get this in exchange for this, and vice versa, right? So that's the idea of a ceasefire, correct? Essentially. So given that example in terms of, two powers bartering over, could be resources, it could be, whatever it is, as a bargaining chip that the other party desires to have, right?
Yeah.
What can Israel offer as a bargaining chip to Palestinians?
Other than to not kill them. That's the bargaining chip.
Which you shouldn't be doing anyway. But it's like...
So then what will Palestinians have to give up in this supposed ceasefire for,
Right.
more of their
That's
land?
That's exactly my point. Why are you asking Palestinians to give up?
Yeah.
They don't have any. So essentially, other than what is left of their home.
This stems from...
And even if you do that, what are you going to do with those displaced Palestinians? Where are they going to go?
Well, and this stems from this supposed idea that it's... And this is more framing, right? That it's Israel versus Hamas, right? Like that's the thing, right? That it's only these two, right? That's who's fighting each other, right? Even though we know who made them, we knew who made Hamas, right? But I have this thread from Fiorella, friend of the show, and she writes a thread with detailed guides of different factions within the Palestinian resistance, which contain more than Hamas. In fact, even within Hamas and other factions, there are different groups and brigades. Israel isn't going after terrorists; they're killing Palestinians. So, I'm not going to read all of these, but you're welcome to pause on each one and, read some stuff if you want to. But we'll read a couple. So this is the Martyr Eaz Eldin Al-Qassam brigades, right? Who are they? The military wing of the Hamas movement, founded in 1991 following the Hamas Foundation. It consists of over 40,000 fighters of various units, including fighting brigades, special forces, cyber units, air defense units, naval fighting units, and intelligence. There's some notable figures here where they're most active, right? And their arsenal: anti-aircraft weaponry, mortars, advanced missiles that can reach 250 kilometers, air and naval drones, anti-tank guided missiles, small arms, and advanced explosive devices. Okay? We have the Sarai al-Quids. They're the military wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the PIJ, founded in 1981 as the Sword of Islam Brigades. The group has maintained a continuous relationship with the axis of resistance, leveraging these to wage resistance for both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Here's where they're the most active and the notable figures. And their arsenal as well. Long and short-range rockets, mortars, explosive devices, drones, IEDs, and small arms. So these are guerrilla guys, all of them, for the most part, from what it looks like. The Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades and the Lion's Den, the military wing of Fatah, right? That's what Hamas was made to combat these guys, essentially. Established during the Second Intifada, although the group is often referred to as the military wing of the Fatah, it operates independently of Fatah's central leadership, correct? So, here's where they're the most active. Here's their notable figures and their arsenals: IEDs, RPGs, and small arms, short-range rockets, and mortars. Okay? So, nothing like cluster bombs, right? We go to the Lion's Den, a politically unaffiliated resistance group officially announced in late 2022, but was active for months prior. It consists of resistance fighters of various factions who decided to fight by any means necessary under one banner. Okay? Right? They have a spokesman. They have where they're the most active, right? They've got a Telegram page, arsenal, small arms, and IEDs, right? So we got a couple more here. We have the Martyr Abu Ale Mustafa Brigades, right? The armed wing of the Marxist Polar Front of the Liberation of Palestine, formerly the Red Eagle Group. They reorganized under their current name after the assassination of PFLP General Secretary Martyr Abu Ali Mustafa, right? They have their little arsenals, small arms, explosive devices, that kind of stuff. And their notable figures and where they're the most active. And then we have the Al-Nasar Salah al-Din Brigades, the military wing of the Popular Resistance Committees, the PRC, founded in 2000 by ex-Fatah fighter Jamal Abu Samhadana in response to the Second Intifada, again, right? Among the closest factions to Hezbollah and Iran. Martyr Jamal Abu Samhadana, right? We covered that in their little arsenal. RPGs, mortars, homemade rockets, small arms, same thing as everyone else pretty much. Pretty much whatever they can get their hands on. And I think this is the last two. Yeah. So we've got the Night Confusion and Night Riot units. Night Confusion or Night Riot units are organized groups of Palestinian youth that operate across the occupied lands. Through their methods, Molotovs, incendiary balloons, and homemade explosives have long been employed. They rose to prominence following the 2018 Great March of Return and 2021 campaign to defend Baita from a Zionist settler outpost. Their goals are to damage settler property and to disturb their lives. They are not affiliated with a particular faction. Okay. And we have the Joint Operations Room, right? The Joint Operations Room, the Palestinian Resistance, is a joint military operation room that includes the military arms of the major Palestinian resistance factions across Palestine. It was introduced in 2006 by Hamas and PIJ to unite their military factions during battles with the IOF. Okay? So they have a bit bigger arsenal because it's a lot of them, right? They have some anti-aircraft stuff. That's about as much as they get. That's like the best weaponry they got out of any of these groups is anti-aircraft weaponry. So, like, right. That's it. So
yeah, and just to add what I was saying in terms of the ceasefire narrative that we're hearing a lot right now, it's like you asking Israel to stop, but we're continuing to fund them in terms of military defense.
Yep.
So are we going to pull our funding in the means for them to cease fire against Palestine? So that's what no one is talking about. Our politicians are sure as hell not going to say anything about that. But we're calling. So this just seems to
someone
be more like
who's talked about it. Let me pull this up. This guy, Huey P. Newton. Israel was created by Western imperialism and is maintained by Western firepower. That's what you're alluding to. Pretty much that without us, Israel doesn't exist. Joe Biden's the one who said without Israel, we would have to invent an Israel. So,
which again, and I tweeted this out, maybe a couple of weeks ago now. But the idea, like initially, like East Africa was considered to be Israel because according to the people at the time, it was uninhabited.
Right.
Meaning uninhabited by white people.
Right. Now I know Russia also offered land. I think there is land still available. If I'm not mistaken. I think China did as well. If I'm not mistaken. Someone in the chat will correct me, but pretty sure that those places actually still exist. So, because I think some of them took the offer. You know what I mean? So, after World War II, like, Russia was also involved in refugees and whatever. So, that could also be an option. I say Nebraska seems pretty uninhabited. We can give them that. Like, let them figure it out. But yeah, I mean, half of them, they are probably from Nebraska now. So it seems like a ton of American Jewish immigrants are there. So, but anyway, I just wanted to talk about that and how labels are bad, because they are. But words are important. Try to get them as correct as possible. Semantics do matter in some degrees. So,
yeah.
But anyway, you ready for the next one?
I am ready for the next one. We're actually going by pretty quick, so
yeah, we're doing the dang thing.
Shorter stream.
Yeah.
But yeah. So actually, let me.
Nope.
Catch this up. Got it. So This is an article that I found maybe Monday. Yeah, I think it was Monday I found this. Again, one of the rare times Twitter delivers some gems. And not to say that this is a gem. I think given the state of affairs right now, it's to be expected that melanated people will feel a way about, blank checks going to Israel and Ukraine as well, while we in this country are suffering. But and not much to be heard in terms of, we've talked about the black vote, being affected, just even prior to this for many other reasons. But now since, Biden is just basically giving carte blanche to Israel in terms of more money for military warfare, it's definitely making black voters feel a certain way or potentially feel a way. So this article is from The Nation, written by Elie Mystal. I believe, well, he's of color, he's black.
Yeah.
I believe he's a shit lib because I've never heard of this guy before. But he did write a very interesting article that I think will be kind of poignant heading into next fall. So he wrote, Biden Israel-Palestine policy could cost him the election.
Yeah.
The president's blank check support of Israel's war on Gaza is alienating many of the black and brown voters he needs to win re-election.
Uh-oh.
So he continues. I am neither Israeli nor Palestinian, nor I am an expert on Middle Eastern geopolitics, terrorism, security, or colonization. I would argue you should be like somewhat of an expert on colonization because it affected your ancestors, but I digress.
He's hedging bets to talk about stuff that he doesn't know completely, but yes.
Anyway, I am an expert in American constitutional law, which in this situation is as useful as being an expert in sandcastle construction during a tsunami. As such, I have little to add to the current international conflagration and the foreign policy discourse around it. Instead, I have tried to read, listen, learn, and generally not say anything that could be used by the most moral bankrupt people to justify the murder of children, both Israeli and Palestinian. However, I am an American, a black one, who has a lot of experience listening to actual people of color, even as their voices are drowned out or dismissed by the prevailing white media. As such, I believe it is in my remit to warn right readers that Joe Biden's unwavering pro-Israeli stance has the potential to do significant harm to his prospects for re-election among voters he needs, young black and brown people. Also, young white people will probably be added to that too.
And the Irish and old black people, and like there's a lot of people who've been on this issue for a minute.
Right.
Nelson Mandela was one of the key figures in this movement. Like, how old's he?
Mandela?
Yeah.
He gone. He did.
I know, but like he would have been like trying to remember when that guy was. I don't know. Yeah, he's dead. He's gone now. He's old. He's way old. So he like died of old age. That's how he died, So
I know many people will not want to think about American political reality so soon after a terrorist attack, while Israel continues to pummel Gaza with airstrikes and continues to hold Israeli hostages. But as a person who desperately wants to stop the anti-democratic tide of MAGA-style fascism in my own country, I can argue we're already there with Biden.
Yeah, we've been there, bro.
But be concerned. Biden risks labeling himself as a president who is in favor of colonization.
He's already called himself a Zionist.
And a capitalist. So
yeah, we're already there, bro. Too late.
And one who would turn a blind eye to ethnic cleansing and war crimes. And those are tough labels to shake once they take hold in communities of color. Voters of color are strategic and willing to swallow enough nonsense and vote for the lesser evil. I actually, in some regard, agree with that. But there are some who will simply not pull the lever for any president in any party who stands aside while an oppressed people is besieged, starved, and bombed into oblivion. Even if you don't think Israel is a colonial power, or don't think the Israeli government is violating the human rights of Palestinians as they wage war against,
except that's not who they're waging war against. Like, anyway, continue.
Right.
We know.
The Americans who do think those things are voters Biden is losing right now.
Turns out they already lost them.
Who, once lost, Biden will never win back.
Pause. Like, A, he never had them to begin with, most likely. Like, because the people who know this would also know better. You know?
Right.
So, I mean, it's also his whole thing of the lesser evil. Essentially, he's saying, like, voters are dumb, but they're not that dumb. Like, that was that paragraph, pretty much. Like, they're willing to swallow some of it, you know? But, like, not all of it. You know? So, yeah. Sure. Here, I'll zoom these. There you go.
Thank you. Separate and apart from Israel's legitimate efforts to secure the release of its citizens taken as hostages and secure itself from terrorist threats, there are those in and around the Israeli government who have used plainly genocidal language to describe the conflict, calling Palestinians human animals, denying that Palestinian civilians have any rights because is their elected leadership, elected in 2006, by the way, and has not allowed those civilians to hold an election since.
Which, who did that to combat who? And why they did that? Like, again, historical context is important. Yep. So that's...
Well, he said, I don't know much. And
yes,
for all intents and purposes, he's definitely...
You're right there. Yeah.
Sounding like...
Yes. But you're working on it. You're asking some good questions.
Or saying that the war is between the children of the light and the children of the dark. Again, BB mentioned that today.
Yes.
Biden has not this language.
Well, you can use it for that one.
Public warning. Probably, but I'm not going to risk it. Nor has he issued public warnings to Israel that the United States will not stand for human rights violations, nor has he stood shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with any Palestinian American or any Muslim American or any Arab American or non-white American calling for a basic respect for human rights.
Yep.
Biden's refusal to publicly call for peace or even restraint could be doing irreparable harm to him, to say nothing, obviously, of the harm it's doing to millions of people in the region. There is scant polling data on the issue so far, but what there is suggests a huge generational divide and a racial one. An NPR PBS poll taken last week shows that while 65% of Americans overall think the country should publicly support Israel, including 86% of baby boomers, that number drops to 48% in the case of Gen Z Americans. The racial divide is also dramatic, with 72% of white Americans favoring U.S. support for Israel, compared to just 51% of what pollsters call non-white Americans.
Yeah. Yep. And follow button. There we go.
Beyond these numbers, it doesn't take a degree in political science to know that Biden already has a problem with young voters, and especially young voters of color. Recent polls taken even before Biden's response to the Israel-Gaza war have shown Biden losing to Donald Trump among voters under 30. And there have already been significant warning signs that Biden is slipping with Black voters. And we've talked about this on the show before.
Yep. Yep. Oh, you need me to zoom out. There you go.
Does anyone really think that giving a foreign government free rein to bomb areas of land as densely packed as the island of Manhattan is helping Biden with young voters and people of color? Or did everybody just not think about that in their zeal to make sure college students who support Palestine can never get a job? People should remember that Biden's age is already a turnoff to young people, and his domestic policy agenda has largely been frustrated by Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, Republican control of the House, and the Supreme Court. No. Like, most of those aren't really the issue there. So, nah. The issue Biden is running on in communities of color are essentially democracy and the rejection of racism. He's running against the MAGA brand of nativism and fascism. He's running on his own personal decency, of which I argue that he has none, but anyway. Biden can entirely appropriately call attacks against Israeli pure evil, but he can't seem to fix his mouth to say, turn on the water to civilians living in a desert.
Yeah.
He can say that Palestinian people deserve dignity and respect, but can't unequivocally say, can you zoom in, please?
Yes. Yeah. Up here. Follow. There you go. It's down here.
But can't unequivocally. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. But can unequivocally say cutting off electricity to civilians is a human rights violation. I'm sorry, but it's hard to see Biden's personal decency when he can't speak up for the firstie. Biden is asking Black and brown voters to trust that he values all lives equally, but that becomes almost impossible to believe when he endorses the treatment of Palestinians as collateral damage to a counter-terrorism campaign.
Yep.
Scroll down, please. There are signs that Biden's posture is causing rifts within his own administration. Last week, State Department official Josh Paul quit. Paul was responsible for processing arms sales to foreign nations. In his resignation letter, he said Biden's blind support for one side were short-sighted, destructive, unjust, and contradictory to the very values we publicly espouse. When the guy who oversees arm deals is essentially saying, this is too violent for me, we may have a problem. More worrying, there has been a lot of private griping from Muslim Americans within the Biden administration, with some threatening to resign en masse.
How about up here?
When I read or listen to white people in the media talking about Biden's approach to this crisis, I've heard pundits call Biden's trip to Israel his finest hour. I'm left with the impression that they just don't know or haven't considered how electorally disastrous it could be for Biden to lose Muslim and Arab American support. There are over 200,000 Muslims living in Virginia. There are 150,000 Arab Americans. In 2020, Biden won that state by around only 500,000 votes. In Michigan, there are over 350 Muslims. 200,000 Arab Americans live in the state. Biden won that state by around only 150,000 votes. Any significant weakening of the support, plus Virginia in play, and makes Michigan functionally unwinnable for Biden. Scroll down, please.
There you go.
And I shouldn't have to tell you that there's simply no path to Biden's electoral college success without Virginia and Michigan. If we broaden things out beyond the Muslim and Arab American populations, there are other dangers. If young college-age people of color sour on Biden and stay home, I'll argue that's beginning to happen. And regardless, Biden has problems across the upper Midwest. Anything less than overwhelming and enthusiastic support from African American voters cost Biden Georgia and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, people still haven't gotten $600 from Biden back in 2020, right?
Nope.
So I'm sure that might become a thing again for some people.
I'm trying to find
remembering that.
there was recently who's the other White House press guy? Not the secretary, but the other one, white dude in a suit, was asked about like Israel's civilian death, and they're like, well, we're trying to mitigate the damage, but Israel defend itself and yada yada. It's like, you know, this is Biden's cabinet literally ignoring the other civilians being massacred. So, you know,
right.
Yep. Anyway, yep. How about up here? There we go.
Yeah. Perhaps in response to this basic electoral math, Biden has in recent days appeared to soften his tone. In an address to the nation from the Oval Office, I guess this was last Thursday night, Biden tried to express empathy for both Israelis and Palestinians. He denounced anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. He said that we can't ignore the humanity of the Palestinian people, and said that Israel would follow the laws of war and protect Palestinian civilians as best they can.
Whatever that means.
In what universe does that happen?
Right.
During his visit to Israel last week, Biden said that Israel should not make the same mistakes this country made after 9/11, an extraordinary statement both because American presidents don't often admit to war mistakes, particularly on foreign soil, and because this particular American showdown.
Yep. Not too that far. There's good, right?
This particular American president was, in fact, a cheerleader for a post-9/11 wars of vengeance. Scroll down. The president used nice words, but it escaped no one's notice that he was saying all of these appropriate words regarding the dignity and humanity of the Palestinian people, while justifying his request to send billions of dollars in military aid and weapons to Israel. Biden did not call for a ceasefire, did not call for de-escalation, it did not even call for peace.
I think I might have found it.
What?
The thing I was looking for. Hold on. It's in the same vein, I think. This right here. Here. And then it'll go full screen, hopefully. Hurry up. Come on.
This is war. It is combat. It is bloody. It is ugly. And it's going to be messy. And innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. I wish I could tell you something different. I wish that that wasn't going to happen. But it is going to happen. And that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it dismissible. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to still express concerns about that and do everything we can to help the Israelis do everything they can to minimize it. But that's unfortunately the nature of conflict. This is
the only way it's going to be minimized if you stop giving them money. That's the only way.
Right, and you're not. Notice who they were talking to. It's only the Israelis. That's all they're talking to. Right. We got to make sure that they don't kill civilians. Are you? Because you haven't done any of that. So anyway, not to sidetrack you too much, but
all right. So this is Bree Newsom. She mostly has good takes. I know she has been kind of problematic sometimes, but more recently, I think she's been on fire. But she called out, but I just inserted this here. And she said, you can't claim Biden is a bystander to Israel's actions when Biden is the one supplying the weapons and Israel wouldn't be able to carry out mass murder without Biden. Please be for real.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is not going to simply look away and forget what happened just because many American voters are willing to.
Right. Yep.
So anyway, back to the article. I know that some people, especially establishment politicians especially, want this speech to be enough. They want to acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians while treating the government actively denying them human rights as a passive force without alternate choices. But that frame isn't simply going to work for voters of color who know all too well how powerful governments justify killing us. for where I sit, his speech did nothing to instill confidence in voters of color that Biden will take a stand against war crimes. His bear hug BB strategy, which is to say, the idea that, well,
that was me. There you go.
The idea that Biden should get close enough to the Israeli government that he can use soft power to restrain it might play well in diplomatic circles and among voters who are inclined to give Biden the benefit of the doubt.
Not
but
us.
on the street, all people are seeing is a blank check Biden appears to be giving to Israel and none of the restraint. This isn't a messaging problem for the Biden administration. The problem is that Biden's actions scream to the world that he values an Israeli child more than a Palestinian one.
Which he values a lot of other children other than ours. On top of that, when in regards to Ukraine, Taiwan, and now Israel. So that's his legacy right now. So yeah.
It also must be said that Biden's lack of support for Palestinians is being viewed in the context of his enthusiastic support for Ukraine.
What I just said. Like, yep. We're getting to it. Next story, too.
Are far from analogous, but Biden literally linked his support for Ukraine and support for Israel together in his Oval Office address. It's a politically tone-deaf comparison for Biden to make because linking the two doesn't work in his favor. It's simply not lost on voters of color that when a white country was invaded, Biden sent guns and missiles and money, while he all seems to have Palestinians is some bottles of water chucked at them from Egypt, and the hard-won pronouncement that not every single one of them is a terrorist who should be deleted from existence.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, too, that whenever the Republican House of Representatives stops beclowning itself as comic relief to the rest of the world, the very first thing they're going to do is pass a massive aid package at Biden's request that sends billions of dollars to Ukraine and Israel. Keep in mind, this was written
and Taiwan.
2 days. This was published 2 days ago, and look what happened today.
Yeah,
we got a new speaker in the House, and what was the first thing he said?
Yeah, money for the people who need money.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually should have put that clip in, but we get the point. I could tell you right now that package is going to go over like a bag of bricks among Black voters. While Biden is functionally making it rain on fallen allies, the child poverty rate,
making it hail more accurately,
which disproportionately affects Black families, has doubled.
Yeah.
Is it fair to blame Biden for Manchin's inconceivable decision to let American kids go hungry? No. Is it easy to explain to a struggling Black family why we have money to aid Ukraine and Israel, but not Detroit and Philadelphia? No, it is not. Let me first say that as a Black person, I'm getting really sick of white liberals using Trump as a specter who emerge from white people's closets to punish Black people for anything less than full-throated support of Biden. Just ask Jim Jordan how threatening people you need to vote for you works out.
Yep.
Keep that in mind because someone that we love is going to play into that in a few minutes.
Okay.
So stay with me here. Moreover, I feel like white commentators too easily forget that we live in a country where Trump is a looming threat only because a significant majority of their own cousins and uncles and spouses are set, once again, to vote for a raging orange clown, no matter how many times he gets indicted for crimes. White folks are the ones threatening the future of American democracy. To save it, Democrats need supermajorities of Latino, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Arab American voters, and they need Black people to continue supporting Democrats by well over 80% margins, and they need all those groups to turn out.
Pause. 80% margins of each of those groups?
Yeah.
And you need the turnout of that. Like, bro, that's good fucking luck.
Right.
Like, good luck. You are definitely not getting that right now. The Pacific Islanders, yeah, they fucking hate you.
they're like, get the fuck. The fucking
Right.
Asian
Somehow
Americans, they're
Biden
like, fuck you, get the fuck.
Right. Somehow Biden has been able to pretty much say F you to every
Each
one
of these
people.
groups. Yeah.
In some way, shape, or
Yep. Yep.
But right. It's like, but it's the point. White people, certain ones, not you, but
Oh, he's
but
fucked
certain
us over
ones,
too. So it's like whatever, you know.
right? But some of y'all will vote for Biden, will vote for Trump, or would vote for Biden either way
Because of Trump, because of the spectering that he's talking about of like, you're voting against someone, not for something.
Right.
So. Yep.
So just maybe the white anti-Trump crowd should listen to voters of color with some respect when they try to tell you what's wrong with their political approach.
And I wish.
Okay. In any event, the Trump would be worse argument, while unquestionably true, isn't the slam dunk white Democrats want it to be. At least not now, when Biden is the one in charge, and Biden is the one standing with a hard right foreign regime that is perceived as denying political participation, freedom, and basic human rights to our oppressed population.
Yep. Well,
this is a long article, but not done.
You're good.
Of course, now it's an important word when discussing the politics of the moment. A reasonable defense of Biden's political calculus is, perhaps, not that his position is defensible to voters of color, but that in 13 months, many of those voters won't care about his indefensible positions.
Don't forget.
I certainly noticed that at least some of the people who are suddenly concerned about free Palestine couldn't have found the Gaza Strip on a map before, killed over 1,000 Israelis. People who didn't care about the intolerable conditions in Gaza 3 weeks ago might well not care about the situation there 13 months from now. If there's one thing I know from a locked fact about the American electorate, white, black, brown, or other, is that we are a fickle, ill-informed, deeply unserious people. Hey! Sounds like Nick. Shout out to Nick Cruz.
Yeah, sounds like a few of us.
And yet, the fact that this war has scarcely begun. Israel is preparing for a ground invasion, one that Biden has given his private backing to, of course, and when it invades, its soldiers will be fighting an urban war against a group using guerrilla tactics. It will not be quick. It will not be pretty. Civilians will die. Pictures of the dead will be shared on the internet. And even if the war does somehow remarkably end soon, the larger situation will remain far from resolved.
Yep.
I don't think Biden or his administration knows how bad it has been for him with his non-white base over the last few weeks. I know that while some people have tried to get the message through privately, many of the people, like me, who would normally be raising the alarm publicly, have been terrified of saying anything. Speaking for myself, I'm worried that anything less than full-throated support for the Biden administration and the Israeli government will be amplified by anti-Semites to justify the slaughter of Jews. And I'm also worried that anything less than full-throated support of the Biden administration and the Israeli government, literally any sympathy for the plight of Palestinians, will be twisted in such a way as to label me a T sympathizer who stands with and we're already seeing that.
Just like the Iraq War people were yelled at.
Right.
So
for the first time in my life, I'd rather be writing about Clarence Thomas.
Which this is from The Nation, right? This is who again?
Elie, I forgot his last name.
Who I imagine, if you look at their particular reportings, I'm sure they're pretty generous to the Democrats.
Yes.
Yes. This is even they're figuring it out. They're going, oh, see, this has been happening to those of us outside this. Is there any more to this, or are we good? How many more we got? 1, 2. Okay. I'll take a second. This has been happening to us outside of these bubbles, right? Already in multiple factions. right? We've already been here, done that, gotten over it, moved on. You know, it's now, this affects these people directly now. Right? That their Jewish colleagues, their Democratic colleagues are all like, hey, be careful what you say right now. You know, I think it was, let me pull that photo up. Pretty sure I sent it to one of you. Where's that? Here? Yep. Open in browser. 2, 1. So waking up. Where is it? There it is. Waking up to friends in the film industry telling me they are deleting their pro-Palestinian posts because of a new blacklist going around here and across the pond. McCarthyism is back. Arab and Muslim filmmakers who already struggle to find work because of systemic racism and Islamophobia can't even show solidarity in case of further repercussions, right? So that's what that person is saying, is that, like, without saying it, is that if I say too much, I will lose my job. And that's what I care about.
And this is kind of funny, but awesome, but funny at the same time. I've known porn stars. I've heard like
Mia Khalifa
online, who are standing for Palestine, and and their fans are not a fan of
and
that.
And Pornhub is sending the money from her videos to support Israel because she has no rights to any of that revenue, even though she was the one exploited.
Right.
Like, how vile and despicable. You know?
When porn stars get it right.
Yes.
And they're being like ostracized and condemned for it, that's a problem to me. Like, not just porn, but I just think that that's kind of an extreme example in my mind, you know, that even they get it right and they're being ostracized for it.
Right.
Or
Himbo in the chat, McCarthyism never left. Like, yeah, I mean, it's we've went from one form of it to another. I mean, Russiagate has been a prominent, and that's the other thing. They're labeling these Russian supporting, yada yada. Like, if you support them, you support the commies. Like, it's standard propaganda. Like, and see, here's where this goes off the rails. This article. I write because I want Biden to get reelected, it says. Why? For one. Why? And that simply cannot happen without the overwhelming support of young people and people of color, which you done lost. Give up already. Like, accept the L. I write because the Arab American activist who has to go door to door to their community to drum up votes for Biden in Michigan. Yeah, I bet they're not doing that now.
They're not doing that.
No help from the administration. Yes, that's because they don't care. I write because the black voter registration volunteer who's trying to get people excited to vote for Biden, which that is not happening, is getting laughed out of the apropkable barbershop. I write because Biden is losing and he continues to only listen to white media pundits who goes on Fox News to laud his speeches. He will spend 2025 working on his presidential library from Delaware. Bro, where have you been? Where have you been? Like, bro. Like, this has been, bro, where have you been under a rock? I know you've been under a rock. It's okay. Like, we'll help you. Come to the light. We'll help you.
No, he's too far gone. If you see Biden,
go ahead.
If you see Biden running around next October playing defense in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, you'll know that he got his message too late. Actually, we should watch this. Like,
yeah, that'll happen.
We should put this out and see check this out this time next year to see if that's really the case.
The same ones that Hillary didn't go to, and like they never learn. It's just repeating the same shit.
Democrats have a nasty habit of listening to non-white voters for only 6 weeks every 4 years. If Biden tries that strategy this time, black and brown voters might stay home. Not might, will.
Yes, are.
And white people will elect Trump to unleash Armageddon.
Because that's what the Armageddon is. Because that's, oh god, this guy. Fuck this guy. Yes. Fuck him.
Yes.
Okay.
We've been expecting you, Harry.
Oh God.
Speaking of calling the ghost of Trump, you know, like I saw this. Mostly, I did this for laughs and also to kind of piss you off a little bit. But you know, but kind of the shaming that Elie kind of mentioned in his article about like how white pundits are basically shaming you know people of color in terms of their position
as they always do.
Right. But yeah, let's see what this child and I can't even go in because he's literally a child.
I'm gonna need more of this before we go. So
Listen, this is really important, and this one's for all the people who are saying that they're not going to vote for Joe Biden in 2024 because of what's happening in the Middle East. By punishing Joe Biden, by not voting for him, you are punishing yourselves and millions of other Americans. This is a gift to the Trump campaign. Republicans have been trying for years to...
Joke's on you, I like punishing myself.
Make it harder for people to vote in swing states and states around the country, but especially young people, people of color, minorities, and more. By sitting on the sidelines saying, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden, you are doing what they want. You are giving a gift to the Republicans. And look,
because they totally don't want me to vote for him. They totally don't want me to do that.
Policy that Donald Trump and the Republicans will pass if they win, and if everybody sits on the sidelines, will be disastrous. It
like
will be
what?
Far worse.
What could they do? Could they get us into a war with Russia? Could they get us into a war in the Middle East? Could they, I don't know, get us into a war in Africa or South America, or suddenly take away our rights, or, you know, not give us money we're owed, or... Like, what could they do, Harry? What could the Republicans do that the Democrats haven't already done? Let's talk about that. They're running out of ideas. Democrats stole them all. You know?
Worse than Donald Trump's first term. So when it comes to Joe Biden, you don't have to love him. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like voting for Joe Biden. But please, compare Joe Biden to the alternative, not the almighty of which is a president you fully agree with and is fully morally in line with you. This is a very complex issue with what's happening in the Middle East. I can assure you that the Biden administration is doing their best, and this is not a reason to give this country back to the Republicans, who will treat Palestine significantly worse than any Democrat ever will. Please, let's be logical with this stuff.
Pause. Genocide? I don't think genocide can get any worse.
Collin,
right?
be logical. Collin, be logical. Listen. You have got to grow up and get serious. All right. We need to have a talk about this. You need to suck it up. Vote for Biden. All right. He's just the best out there. Okay. You need to learn. He's just the best you can get.
Folks, well, listen, this is really important.
No, I'm not going to listen.
Wait. Can you stop embarrassing yourself?
But funny enough, like, because usually, before I get into the tweet that I want to talk about, this is from Pictures She. Now go back.
Yeah, I got you.
Like, he's another one of these, like, slobs on Biden's knob, basically, every time.
Yeah.
Like, you know. But, surprisingly, this tweet, thank you for writing this, Elie. I really hope a lot of people read this with an open mind, because it's very important. Now, granted, obviously, he had his shit Libby takes, but mostly, I would argue, he was mostly correct in terms of Biden's going to lose the, you know, I would argue has already, like the melanated vote. Which, so, I guess, you know, Harry needs to read that article too and see.
Yep, he might need to learn. He doesn't know how to read, Collin. God.
Well, he's in college.
Yeah, but it's American education system, bro. It's not like he didn't go somewhere that actually teaches you. So.
But anyway, I'm assuming this is a black woman. Assuming her picture is correct. at the Acumen, Ashley Stevens. So this is a Black woman. With I would imagine that she would be responding to someone like Harry. But she says, to end this segment, it's really disgusting to tell Black people to vote for Biden in 2024 because Trump is going to be worse after they made valid criticism. It takes incredible amount of privilege to talk down to people who are justifiably upset. Things are materially worse for people. Come on. The cost of living has skyrocketed. There's an actual housing crisis. Student loans are back, and there's no help in sight. To tell people they need to stand behind and vote for that man is nasty work.
Yeah.
Y'all would rather support voters than demand Biden and Dems do better. It takes more courage to actually hold Biden accountable, something a lot of people said they were gonna do.
Yeah.
You can't keep sacrificing working class and poor Black people who have been harmed the most by the policies that Joe Biden and Democrats are enacting. These Negro liberals who go on TV to work on behalf of Biden's administration and Democrats are concerned about their kids drinking lead poison water.
Yep.
Their kids' schools aren't being underfunded. They aren't feeling the pinch at the gas station and grocery store.
Yeah, it's not so bad for us. You know?
It's real nasty and should be shameful to dismiss people's lived realities and place a responsibility on voting and not the politicians currently in power with the ability to make change right now if they wanted. These folks have no morals, so they say nonsense and vote shame. And we'll end it right there.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Let's check the chat, see what they have to say. So Harry needs to be taken behind the woodshed, with calls of "Let's go, Brandon." Harry something or other. This kid's an idiot. Yeah, appreciate you guys on the Rockfin. So you know we're here. You can see, look, there's people there. For once, which is nice. And one or two, talking back and forth. Rumble's got some peoples. Let's check on Rumble. Their kids aren't going to end up drafted or otherwise going to war either, says Plants Poop Oxygen. So yeah. So many people don't actually read the book in college. I mean, I can't blame you. That's what Cliff Notes are for.
Right.
You know. But yeah, I mean, look, dude, George W. Bush made it through Yale. Like,
right.
You know, these white people get like dragged through.
Right. He was a C student from what I remember. Right.
Yes.
Like that, right?
Yeah. C for Caucasian. That's what C means. Like, because those are the only ones where it's acceptable. You know, like if you got a C, you ain't getting into no jobs. Like you got C, no, but that guy can become a rocket scientist even if he got C's. So it's like, well, he made it. You know. Anyway, yep. There was a mass shooting apparently in Maine. So if you're in the area, please stay safe.
Where in Maine, do you know? Or anyone in the chat knows?
I can look. Someone in the chat's probably already said it. I think it's something with an L. I sent it to Indy, so let me check. Let me look. 2 seconds. 2, 1. Yeah, I got it. It's here. Hurry up. Twitter. We don't got all day. Lewiston, I do believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I know actually where that is.
Yeah. Still at large, developing situation. They of course had the guy like, you know, he was on their radar as they always are. But yeah, anyway, stay safe out there. Little breaking news for everyone. So anyway, you ready for our next one?
Ready for the next one and the last one.
Yep. So this one's short. USA blocked peace. I just wanted to show off my lovely thumbnail. I did a good job. Look at it. Look at it. Put it on your fridge, please. But Ted Snyder over at Anti-War writes, the mounting evidence that the U.S. blocked peace in Ukraine. With a little peace and love, Putin, you know, nice and full of hippie goodness. So on June 13th, 2023, okay, taking questions from war correspondents at the Kremlin, Putin confirmed what had already been reported, that Russia and Ukraine had reached an agreement in Istanbul. Peace was possible. The tentative agreement would see Russia withdraw to its pre-war position in exchange for a Ukrainian promise to give up its NATO aspirations, which...
So, going with our definition of ceasefire...
Yes.
This
would have been that.
Right.
Yes. So we already know that NATO told them multiple times and made it very clear that they were to not join NATO. They were not joining. Okay? They had already told them. They already knew before this. Okay? So, but at the June press conference, Putin revealed for the first time just how close Russia and Ukraine had come to peace in the early days of the war. The tentative agreement had been initialed by both sides. I don't remember his name and may be mistaken, but I think Mr. Arak Hamia headed Ukraine's negotiated team in Istanbul. I bet that dude's not living anymore, if I were to take a guess. He even initialed this document. Russia, too, signed the document. During the talks in Istanbul, we initiated this document. We argued for a long time, butted heads there, and so on. But the document was very thick, and it was entitled by Medinsky on our side and by the head of their negotiating team. So they put some little monograms down, okay? So days late, on June 17th, in a meeting with a delegation of leaders from African countries, Putin went further, dramatically holding up the document and revealing it to the world for the first time. We did not discuss with the Ukrainian side that this treaty would be classified, but we have never presented it nor commented on it. This draft agreement was initialed by the head of the Kyiv negotiation team. He put in his signature there. Here it is. But the initial agreement went no further. We actually did this, Putin told war correspondents at the Kremlin, but they simply threw it away later, and that's it. Talking to the African delegation, Putin said, after we pulled our troops away from Kiev. Okay, you remember this? When the Russians pulled their troops from Kyiv? That's what. This is why they did that. It wasn't just because Ukrainians mounted an impressive counteroffensive. It was because the Russians backed off. Right? Initially. Like, remember when they made it to Kyiv and then they backed out and then they had to go back in again? Right? That was this. Yeah. So, as they had promised to do, the Russians promised them as part of this agreement. The Kyiv authorities tossed their commitments into the dustbin of history. They abandoned everything. But Putin did not primarily blame Ukraine. Okay? This is like, not blaming Palestine. He implicitly blamed the U.S., saying that when Ukraine's interests are not in sync with U.S. interests, ultimately it is about the United States' interests. We know that they hold the key to solving issues. Putin's claim that a tentative agreement could have stopped the war on terms that satisfied both Ukraine and Russia in the days before the massive Ukrainian loss of life, and land, if not for U.S. obstruction, has now been verified by four independent sources. The first is Russian. On September 23rd, at a press conference following the UN General Assembly high-level week, Russian Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov confirmed Putin's account of both the birth and the death of the tentative agreement. On the first point, Lavrov said, we hold talks in March and April 2022. We agree on certain things. Everything was already initialed. On the second point, Lavrov said that 2 days after the agreement was initialed, the talks abruptly ended because I think someone in London or Washington did not want this war to end. Days later, during a September 28 interview, Lavrov was less speculative. He said that in April 2022, Ukraine proposed ceasing hostilities and settling the crisis based on providing reciprocal, reliable security guarantees. He then clearly said, but this proposal was recalled at the insistence of Washington and London. Importantly, the second source is Turkish. The host of the Istanbul talk, two well-placed Turkish officials backed the Russian account of the end of the agreement. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu says, and I'm not going to do a Turkish accent, so thank me for that. Because of the talks, Turkey did not think that Russia-Ukraine war would continue much longer, but he said there are countries within NATO who want the war to continue. Following the NATO foreign ministers meeting, he explained, it was the impression that there are those within the NATO member states that want the war to continue, let the war continue, and Russia get weaker. Right? So, Cavusoglu is not alone. Norman Kurtulmuş, the deputy chairman of Erdogan's ruling party, told CNN Turk that we know that our president is talking to the leaders of both countries in certain matters. Progress was made. Reaching the final point, then suddenly we see that the war is accelerating. Someone is trying not to end the war. The United States sees the prolongation of the war as its interest. There are those who want this war to continue. Putin Zelensky was going to sign, but someone didn't want to. The third source is then Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Look who shows up, Collin. The Israelis are here. Bennett was involved in an earlier set of talks, but reports the same conclusion. There was, Bennett said, a good chance of reaching a ceasefire. Ceasefire, Collin. So, yeah. But the West, Bennett says, blocked it. Now, who's to think that ceasefires in other countries could be made, Collin, and that we might decide to, like, I don't know, block those? Who's to say that might not happen? You know, just, I don't know, someone involving Israel, like in this case. The fourth source is new. In a recent interview with German's Berliner Zeitung, former German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder confirms both of Putin's accounts. For the first time, Schroeder has given a detailed account of his role in the Istanbul talks, though, as Nikola Petro has pointed out to me, he has hinted at it in the past. Schroeder says that at the request of Ukraine, he played a central mediating role in the talks. Along with Rustem Umerov, Schroeder would convey a message to Putin. Umerov is the current defense minister of Ukraine. At the time in March 2022, he is playing a key negotiating role. Schroeder says he had 2 conversations with Umerov, then a one-on-one conversation with Putin, and then with Putin's envoy. According to Schroeder, Ukraine does not want NATO membership, would accept compromise, security guarantees that they would reintroduce Russian in Donbass, and we're ready to talk about Crimea. Okay, those are big points, Collin, that they're willing to give up on. Okay, reintroduce Russian in Donbass, so essentially let them have Donbass in some form or fashion, right? And Crimea, that they wanted to talk about that. Like, you guys can have Crimea too. We just stop hurting us. Pretty much, I think. But in the end, nothing happened, Schroeder said. My impression, nothing could happen because everything else was decided in Washington. Like the Russian and the Turkish sources, Schroeder reports that the Ukrainians did not agree to peace because they were not allowed to. They first had to ask the Americans about everything they discussed. What does that sound like, Collin? I can't go out. I got to talk to my husband first. I gotta, you know, I gotta ask, make sure it's okay. Schroeder adds one more significant detail. It is often reported that the massacre in Bucha played a pivotal souring role in the negotiations, contributing to their terminations. Schroeder challenges that account. Nothing was known about Bucha during the talks with Umerov on March 7th and 13th. I think the Americans didn't want the compromise between Ukraine and Russia. The Americans believed they can keep the Russians down. Schroeder newly published account of the Istanbul talks add to the evidence provided by Putin, Lavrov, Bennett, and the Turkish officials that Ukraine and Russia might have arrived at a peace that satisfied both of their goals and avoided the horrid loss of life that has followed since, had the U.S. not intervened and put an end to the talks and the tentative agreement. Care Bear.
Yes, you.
Thoughts?
I mean, you've talked about this enough, but
yeah.
I mean, what's more needs to be said besides?
Are we the baddies? Are we the baddies?
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the hoes be knowing.
Yes, they do. The hoes do indeed be knowing.
But it's just, we live in an imperialist empire, so anything to promote war is gonna be the thing that is gonna drive our. It does drive our economy, but sadly, of the risk of people in the global south, as we're seeing in Palestine, and even in Ukraine, it's not like Ukrainians there are necessarily getting the good end of the deal. Like, they're also affected as well. So I mean, I can't believe, like, given the last few months, like, I said this, like, the second half of the year is gonna be bad. I had no idea it was gonna be
this bad.
This shit. Like, I didn't have I think that, we're gonna be in like 2 wars.
3. 4.
Wow.
Like, there's a couple of them we're in now. We've been in 7, like, since then.
Right.
We're still in Syria. We're still in Yemen. Like, we pulled out of 1. Like, we're still in all the others. So we don't have boots on the ground in Ukraine, although wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we totally kind of maybe might. Roundaboutly. And the talks of that in Israel on top of that, which we already have joint ventures among the two. But I just find it funny about all this talks of ceasefire. When we look at what happens when we engage in ceasefires elsewhere, right? What happens, Collin? The U.S. does what?
And
fucks it all up.
Yeah.
It fucks up the peace. So, which, I feel like
serenity now
might be more important than peace at this point. So, anyway, just keep paying attention, folks. Would be nice. It all connects. Everything is connected. So you like how Israel was in on that one, right? You're like, Israel's like, well, actually, they kind of like. I just like that Israel came in to say some stuff on that. Like, very funny. Anyway, what else we got?
That's it. That's it.
We got stuff coming up this next week, right?
Yes.
Here you go. We need that up, right?
Yep. So slight update, I guess. Angel is going to be on tomorrow night at 7.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Anita. Indy and Himbo are going to be on with No Less Work Anymore at 10:30.
Yeah.
So all these shows, at least through the weekend, will be on. This is Indy's personal channel. So unless something happens, make sure you check Twitter, and we'll send the links for you. But it'll either be here or definitely check us out on Rumble.
Yep. Right down there. Look at that. Look at that little Rumble thing. Go there. Go to Rockfin. We appreciate the people who are there now.
I did talk to Indy earlier. Tara is not going live on Friday.
Okay.
I think you know that too. So, or at least now you know.
Yep.
And then Boats will be pre-record from Sunday show.
Yep.
We'll
going up Friday.
10. Sunday, actually this Sunday, and I'm sure Indy will want to talk about this. I mean, you already talked about it with Indy on Sunday.
Indie Media Awards will be on both channels Sunday.
Yeah.
So
and we'll have our normal channel back up. So Indy is saying, I think that's Indy, saying Boats only on Rumble and Rockfin on Friday more than likely.
Sure.
So either way, just check that out and see, and we'll let you know on the Twitters. Monday, Politically Homeless with Crab and Chris. Jesse will have off, and it'll be Halloween. So enjoy your spooky, all that good stuff on next Wednesday. And next Wednesday we'll be back on.
You call me Schmoopy.
We'll have special guest GJ Joe Nice, who will be on with us next week. He wanted to talk about some stuff regarding our fascist government. So always a pleasure to have him on. So check him out on our show next week.
Yep. You can also get yourself some merch. And again, try to find ways to fund us other than YouTube, although we appreciate that as well. Subscribing and sharing is the best thing you can do in that regard. But, you know, if you're one of these members that are down there right now, you're not one. It should have sent you an email. So feel free to try to transfer that to Patreon or Substack. Links in the indienews.network Linktree down in the description below. If you want to find ways to support us there. But also indienews.shop. Get you some merch. You know, who doesn't want this bitch shirt? You know? There's a conversation starter. It's nice. Get out there. Go do it. But I think that's it. Yep. Look out for clips. They'll be out. But anyway, we appreciate all you guys. Love you. Keep listening to what... Wait. That's the other show. This one's... Labels are bad. Stay independent. Yes. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye. Have a great time.